Hey guys, Melissa here. In this video, I'm going to show you how I wrap this trillion-shaped Moldavite stone into a prong ring setting. So stay tuned and I'll show you how. Alright, so let's get started. First, I'll just go over quickly what materials I'm going to use. All my usual wire wrapping tools. I got flush cutters, chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, flat nose pliers. I'm going to need a mandrel. You're going to need some sort of ruler and a Sharpie. I also use some painter's tape to keep my square wires straight. And of course, I'll have all my tools and materials down in the description if I miss something. Today I'm challenging myself and I'm going to try to prong wrap this 8mm Moldavite trillion, and I'm going to wrap it in sterling silver. I chose 21 gauge square, 21 gauge, 22 gauge, there's not much difference. So I'm going to make a size 6, so I'm going to use about 5 inches. 3 lengths. I always like to pull my square wire out with a cloth, kind of straighten them out a bit. That helps when trying to lay them flat against each other. Alright, I've got my 3 lengths of my square wire. Lay your square wire next to each other, nice and flush. Next I'm gonna find center, and I took my my Sharpie and marked center about 2.5 inches in. And with my tape, this is my painter's tape, I'm gonna tape on either side of my center mark just to keep those square wires from twisting. Sometimes they get a little mind of their own and they'll twist on you. If you get them flush together and kind of wiggle them back and forth, that helps line them up. Got my squares taped up. Now I want to kind of shape them on the mandrel. I marked my center so I can curve my wires around evenly. Make your center the bottom of the shank. And I'm going to shape them around the size 6. You're going to have to flip them around because if you have a tapered ring mandrel like I do, it's going to make your wires cockeyed. So once you have a nice even circle at the size that you want, make sure your mark's at the bottom. Then you can stagger your ends here. I'm going to bring this one over here, and then this guy over there. So they're staggering. Throw it back in the mandrel. Make sure they bisect each other directly above your center mark. Well, I've got my ring on the mandrel. I'm going to kind of mark the size of the ring out on the wires here at the 6, because when you let go they're going to stagger. Keep the size of your ring consistent. You're soon going to cover that up anyways, because now we're going to put our bindings on. I'm going to do that with half round wire. I'm using 18 gauge today. You can use 20 gauge. I just happened to grab the 18 gauge, so we'll use that. All right, I cut off about 3 inches of my half round, and I'm gonna bend it in half, thereabouts. I'm gonna start throwing on my first bindings. Now, I'm gonna see how wide my stone is. Depending on how wide your stone is, depends on how many bindings you put on. I think I can do 3, because it's pretty wide. It's 8 millimeter. Let me push my marks together. Bring this binding underneath. Gently, I don't want to distort it too much. I'm gonna smush this guy above. I'm gonna bring that guy over the top. Okay, and I'm gonna keep putting it on my mandrel. Keep my ring size consistent and even. Okay, so I think there's plenty of room for 3 along the top. I'm just gonna bring them through. Can I give them a smush? All right, so next I'm gonna start constructing my prongs. So I'm gonna make 4 of them. I'm gonna put 2 on one side and 1 on each of the other sides. So I'm gonna isolate those. The 4 outer ones. Just gonna pull them up. And these middle ones will just be decoration. Towards the end. Okay, so I'm gonna bring those up. I mean, you don't have to do a trillion. If you're doing square, oval, round, then you spread your prongs out evenly. But for this guy, I'm gonna bring these 2 on the one side close together, because I'm gonna have 2 along one side. On the 2 other sides, up in the corners. Well, not in the corners, but close to the corners. And you'll find that working with faceted stones, that they're not all cut equal. The color on them may be different for each one as far as depth. So for each, you're gonna need to measure each one to make sure, make your prongs the correct size. My stone is about 5 millimeters from the tip to the edge, the top edge. And I'm gonna need a couple millimeters more than that to make the prong. And you're also going to need to bring your prongs up at the right angle. And that's why you line that up with your stone. Make sure your wires come up at the right angle that your stone is. So what I'm going to do with mine, I eyeball it to about 5 millimeters, and I add on a couple millimeters for the prong, and then I mark it. And these 2 I'm going to make the same. Okay, I'm gonna go from the inside here. And do that. So now they're even. Okay, got those marked. Let's do the side ones. Okay, so I measured them 5 millimeters to compensate for the depth of my stone, and then I added a couple millimeters for the prong. So now we're gonna bend our prongs. Okay, let's go for it. So I'm gonna use my flat nose pliers for these. So I'm gonna bend my prongs towards the outside of the ring. This one goes that way, this one goes that way. This mark looks a little longer than this one, so I'm gonna grab a little bit lower. And bend it at 90 degrees. Start bending it more. Nice strong squeeze, and that down at the base here, you're gonna bend it back up again. Same with this side, you're gonna grab it right at your mark and bend it the other direction. Come around. Make sure it's even with the other one. Give it a good squeeze, bend this guy out 90 degrees. Okay, let's flip to the other side. Grab right at your mark, flip it towards the outside, bend it over, give it a good squeeze, and squeeze it from both directions so your square wire stays nice and straight and right next to each other. Okay, so there's your mark there. Make sure it's about even with the other prong here. Give it a squeeze and bend the base up. Okay, now you go in and kind of angle your prongs the way you want them. So now I'm going to bend the tips of my prongs. So I'm just going to take the last millimeter. You see the millimeter. Just with my flat nose and bend it over. And each one of them. 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter. This prong looks a little longer than the others. I straighten it out and redo it. know your stone's gonna seem like it's flopping around right now, but once you bring your wires around to lock it in, then it locks it in. While I'm at this stage, it's a good time to throw it on the mandrel. See where we're at. We're still at a 6, so that's great. All right, so see where your half rounds are. We're gonna go ahead and start wrapping them around the outside of your pronged area. All right, bring the other side around nice and snug. Push it through. Only have enough for 2 bindings, so that's perfectly fine. I would have liked of my ends to be longer, but we'll see what we can do here. Now these middle guys I want on the bottom, so get those out of the way. Have your prong wires crossing like that. So next what we're going to do is each prong we're going to wrap around its neighbor. See, this one's coming out this way. So we're going to wrap around the neighbor. Go through the center and wrap around the other neighbor. It's preferable that these were longer. So I'm going to recommend 6 inches of wire so you have plenty to work with. 5 inches is barely making it for a size 6. Okay. All right, so this one's coming around. Let's wrap this around its neighbor. Bring it through the center. And wrap around the other neighbor. Okay, one more left. So this one's coming from, it's this prong, so we'll wrap around neighbor right here, through the center, around the other neighbor. Okay, so I did all 4 prongs. Let's pull those prongs out a little bit, get them ready to grab the stone. see if we can get this stone set. So my flat side is along these two, or one of the sides is along these two. Might have to push your wires down a bit to accommodate the stone. There's always adjusting to do. Flattening the prong like so. You might have to tighten your wires underneath. This might look a little crooked and uneven. Some minor squeezing and adjusting will get that taken care of. Prongs and faceted gemstones always take some practice to get them right. I'm going to go ahead and finish up. I'm going to make these side guys into little swirlies, so I'm going to need to cut them a little shorter. I'm thinking about there. And take my round nose pliers and start twirling. And continue twirling with my chain nose. Okay, I'm going to take my tape off. I need a little bit of polishing. There's some nicks in it, so let me go do that and I'll come back. right, here she is. And polishing makes all the difference. Kind of a higher profile. So this kind of design you gotta be careful with. So it's my first trillion that I prong wrapped in a ring. 1.4 carat Moldavite, 8mm, wrapped in sterling silver. Things I'm learning is to give myself plenty of wire. Just always work with 6 inches, even more for larger rings. If I had more, I can wrap around my prongs a little more, twist them tighter. You know, lesson learned. The more I do, the better I'll get. I just love the checkerboard top there. One of my favorite cuts is that checkerboard top. But anyway, that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot out of it. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one.